a man buys a car, he buys it because it offers something no other car can give him. I figure there must be a lot of different reasons for buying Chevrolets. We sell them to so many different kinds of people.
Yes. Doctors, truck drivers, salesmen, school teachers, streetcar conductors, every kind of person. And probably each one decided on Chevrolet because it filled a particular need that no other car could fill.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what kind of person would combine all the reasons so many different kinds of people buy Chevrolets.
You'll never see anyone like that walk in here.
Good morning. Would one of you gentlemen like to talk to me about a new car?
Why, yes, sir. My name is Ted Randall. Do you care to step over here?
Thank you. My name is X.
Do you spell that E-K-K-S?
No, just plain X.
Oh, I see. First, I'd like you to see how...
I'm right here. The back seat looks so comfortable, I thought I'd try it.
Well, that's fine, Mr. X. Then you can see how much leg room there is and how comfortable the rear seat is. Plenty of room for 3 big people. And on deluxe models, foam rubber seat cushions, both front and rear. You won't find that in all cars. Here's something else. A simple adjustment of the rear door lock gives you a great safety plus. Try the handle.
Oh, I see. That way the children can't open the door from the inside.
Look at those long, low, sweeping lines, unbroken by the integral rear fenders. Because Chevrolet is a recognized style leader and stays in style longer, its trade-in value is higher.
I see what you mean.
You can see Chevrolet's beauty, but I wish you could see how beautifully it's constructed. For instance, box girder frame members are known to be the strongest, and Chevrolet's frame is...
I can see the frame.
You can?
Yes. The box section runs the full length of the frame, doesn't it?
Yes, for a more substantial foundation. And as I was about to say, it's exclusive with Chevrolet. Now, if you can see that, Mr. X, you can also see why we call Chevrolet's Fisher body uni-steel constructed. The turret top, steel floor, side panels, instrument panel, center bow, and parcel rack are all welded together into a single unit of tremendous strength. That's true only in Chevrolet in its price field. Chevrolet's low center of gravity gives a road-hugging quality that helps give that big car ride. And notice the beautiful grille. Here we have what a lot of car manufacturers wish they had under their hoods. The famous Chevrolet valve-in-head engine. In fact, several manufacturers are trying to come close by switching to some type of valve-in-head.
Yes, I've heard about that.
But remember, the owner-approved economy and performance of Chevrolet's engine is the result of nearly 40 years of constant improvement and of building more valve-in-head engines than all other manufacturers combined. For 1952, the Chevrolet engine, with its famous cooling system and specialized 4-way oiling, has been even further improved. New engine mountings have been relocated and hold the engine in a shock-resistant, rubber-cushioned cradle. You'll be amazed at how these new mountings give you smoother operation, whether you're idling, accelerating, or cruising.
It's certainly nice and shiny, but then I've never seen a new car that wasn't.
That's true. But Chevrolet uses more expensive finishes. 6 coats of polished lacquer over 1 coat of primer and 2 of spray glaze, giving a smoother, more lustrous finish. And you can touch up small areas without having to do over an entire panel. These advantages can't be found in cars with baked enamel. And Chevrolet offers you a wider range of solid colors and two-tone combinations than has ever before been offered in its field. By the way, notice how easily the counterbalance trunk lid lifts and stays open. Plenty of room inside, too, for lots of luggage. And you can still reach the spare tire without moving anything. Imagine that, Mr. X.
Imagine it? Why, yes, I will if you say so.
And you'll notice that the trunk hinges are enclosed to keep them from damaging your load. Of course, Chevrolet gives you safety plate glass all around. A Chevrolet exclusive in its price field. I know you and your family want comfort. Extra low-pressure tires and the widest rims in the low-priced field iron out a lot of bumps and jolts. But there are other riding comfort features that you can't see.
Can't you? Well, I can.
For instance, Chevrolet's unitized knee action and center point steering. The positive, double-acting, airplane-type shock absorbers are balanced to meet all conditions of average driving. And for 1952, further shock absorber improvements give an even smoother ride, front and rear, on all types of roads. And on Chevrolet, to prevent side sway, the rear shocks are mounted diagonally.
I've heard about Chevrolet's self-energizing brakes. What does that mean?
It means up to 25% less work for you, because the motion of the car itself is used to apply pressure to the brake drums. Chevrolet's jumbo brake drums are the largest in the low price field for better control and faster braking action. Double life bonded brake linings wear nearly twice as long. Brake drum scoring from rivets is eliminated because there are no rivets. Now there's a lot more inside. Suppose we just climb... pardon me, sir, but this time let's use the door.
Well, yes. I never thought of that.
Just push the button. Nothing to catch on your clothing. Just open the wide door and sit down. Chevrolet pioneered the front seat that adjusts forward and upward. It moves effortlessly on a ball-bearing slide. Now, if you're too close to the wheel, that is, I mean, if you're too far from the... well, you get the idea. Naturally, every driver wants maximum visibility.
Naturally.
Well, you get it with Chevrolet's narrower corner posts and curved safety plate windshield, the largest in the low-priced field.
It's just as beautiful inside as out.
The instrument panel is beautiful and practical. Makes driving easier, day or night. Then there's the upholstery. Beautiful, easy to clean, and quality you usually find only in more expensive cars. And on deluxe models, Chevrolet gives you trim and upholstery in two-tone combinations to harmonize with the exterior finish you choose. Now I want to tell you about Chevrolet's exclusive Power Glide automatic transmission. The first automatic drive in the low-priced field. Owner approved over billions of miles. With Power Glide, you simply step on the accelerator to go, step on the brakes to stop. And Power Glide Chevrolets now have the added convenience of an automatic choke. With Power Glide, you move smoothly ahead on an oil-cushioned flow of power. There's no direct mechanical connection between the engine and rear axle, and nothing to cause steps or surges in power. Yes, Power Glide is another example of Chevrolet's leadership. With Power Glide, Chevrolet's 105 horsepower valve and head engine gives you matchless performance. You glide up hills easily, effortlessly, because the engine selects its own drive ratio to meet the power needs of each moment. There is no freewheeling. Your engine holds you back when you decelerate or go down a hill. For even greater engine braking, flick the control lever to low. Power Glide lets you concentrate on driving. And with Chevrolet's center point steering, you never have to fight the wheel, regardless of roads, crosswinds, or speeds. And Power Glide makes parking easier. Just switch the control lever back and forth between low and reverse. And when you've parked, set the lever at park, and your Chevrolet is rigidly gear locked. Mr. X, with Chevrolet, you drive with ease and comfort, safely. You know, that Mr. X is one of the most interesting people I've ever met. There's a man who can really see and appreciate some of the hidden values we've been telling people about.
Well, where is he now?
Well, we were talking in the closing room, and All at once, there was the order all made out on my desk and signed with an X. And suddenly, he just wasn't there.
Oh, maybe he had to talk to his wife.
Yeah.
Did you ever find out who he really is?
Yes, I think I did. He's the man we were talking about, who would combine all the reasons why people buy Chevrolets. In other words, he's the symbol of millions of satisfied Chevrolet buyers and owners who have learned that there's no mystery as to why more people buy Chevrolet than any other car.
Well, thank you very much. I guess that takes care of everything. Goodbye.
And you have a good buy, Mr. X.
Goodbye? The best buy. The way I figure it, your money ahead at the start. Your value ahead through the miles. You're ahead all the way with Chevrolet.
Discussion is the privilege and the responsibility of all citizens living in a democracy. Responsibility? Dennis Blake never thought so. He figured that if you had a problem, especially a personal problem, you made up your own mind about how to solve it. And that was that.
What's the matter? You haven't said a word all day.
Now, what's there to say? I've made up my mind not to go to college, and that's that.
What's wrong with you anyway? You want to go, don't you?
No, I don't. And I don't want to be told what I want to do. I've got it all figured out in my own mind. I'm not going, I know the reasons, and I'm satisfied. So why don't you guys let me alone? Satisfied? Or am I? Well, maybe I haven't got the thing as clear in my mind as I pretend. Sure, it's nice to talk about going to work instead of school. Sure, it sounds like the right thing to do, but if I knew that the old man's pocketbook could stand the gaff, I guess I might think twice. Oh, well, what's the use of talking about it? I'm going to work, and that's all there is to it.
Oh, Dennis.
Yeah?
Come on in for a minute, will you, son? You haven't been saying much lately. Something on your mind?
No, nothing.
By the way, these came for you by mail.
Well, what's all this? I never sent for anything like this.
Relax, it was my idea. Let's talk it over right now.
Well, what's there to say, Dad? We all know what the facts are.
I'm not so sure we do, Dennis. I'm tired of your brooding around the place. Now, I think the time has come to get some fresh air onto this problem. And we're just going to sit down and talk it out.
Good, Harriet. I'm glad you're here. Well, I suppose it's up to me to start it off. I think you ought to go to college. I think you really should. You can't possibly imagine what a college education will mean to you later in life.
I think I can, Dad. After all, most of the fellas are going, and I've had plenty of chances to hear them talk about it. But, look, you know we can't afford it.
Well, that's very considerate of you to feel that way, son, but don't you think it's a matter for your father and me to work out?
No, he's right, Harriet. The truth of the matter is we can't afford the usual college. But if you're willing to work hard and give up some things, and we give up some things, maybe we can manage it.
What do you mean? Either I can go or I can't.
Fortunately, it's not so simple. I've been looking through these catalogs, and there are a great many ways that a person can get a college education these days. It isn't always necessary to go to the big school with a big campus, although it does have its advantages.
Well, gee, I never thought about that.
Let's see now, are you all agreed on this?
Well, Dennis is going to send for more detailed information from 2 colleges where you work part of the time and study the other.
Right, and I'm going to figure out how to pay for 1/3 of whatever the tuition cost may be.
And whatever I can't earn by the jobs the college arranges for me, I can make working during the summer. I can see myself now digging ditches. Gee, Dad, I'm glad we talked it over.
So am I.
Wait till the fellas hear about this.
Yes, talking it over is a natural process, and one that can be effective, whether it concerns personal problems, family problems, or problems of society at large. Among the workers in this manufacturing plant, there is a different type of discussion going on.
Grievance sessions, discussions, just a stall. The only way they'll settle these grievances and know we mean business is if we go on strike.
Yeah, let's hit the bricks. So we hit the bricks. What do my kids eat while we're off the payroll? The way it's working now, you'll be fired anyway. Get wise to yourself.
Okay, let's go to the meeting tonight and tell our grievance committee we mean business.
Let's give them one more chance to get some action out of management.
And it looks to me as though our discipline is getting out of hand all over the plant. That's why we've got to push this Joe Adams case.
Well, our position may be a little weak. I looked into this whole thing pretty carefully, and it looks to me as if the fault was about equally divided.
Well, what kind of talk is that? The foreman is our man. We've got to stand behind him.
You said it. Sooner or later, we got to show who's boss around here.
We're all set then? Okay, let's hit this one hard. Merrill, you've got to see our side. You admit that in this case, Joe did get into a fight on the floor, and we can't permit that to happen. We must have discipline.
Okay, Mr. Smith. But you forget that the foreman swore at Joe first, and we're not going to stand for that. Then there are these other 15 grievances that aren't settled yet.
Listen, Farrell, we're willing to try Joe out again, but we insist that he take a disciplinary 10-day layoff without pay. Then we can get to the other grievances.
Sure, the foreman gets away with murder and we take it on the chin.
We can't blame the foreman much for losing his head. He had plenty of reasons to, and besides...
He represents management, doesn't he? It's your job to see that he knows how to supervise men.
Are you trying to tell me how to run my business?
I told you, Farrell, we're just wasting our time. Let's report back to the membership. Maybe they'll settle this when the men are out in the streets and the company can't fill its orders.
But this is not what happened. Calmer heads on both sides of the table prevailed. The discussion went on. There were recesses while each side had smaller discussions of its own. And then, this happened.
Well, that proposition makes sense to me. You reinstate Joe, dock him for the day of the fight, and we'll try and work along with that foreman.
All right. But remember, no more fights on the floor.
Okay. Well, now that that's out of the way, let's see if we can't settle some of these other grievances. And we'll report back to the membership, and I think they'll go along. All right, let's take them one at a time and see what we can come up with here. Which one is it?
As a result of the agreement, this happened, and this, and this, and this.
However, discussion is not confined merely to family problems, nor just to the problems between management and labor. In most of man's relationships with his fellow men, discussion plays a vital role. But what exactly is discussion? Is this discussion? Is this discussion? Can free discussion take place here? Let us define discussion. It's a free communication of ideas and knowledge, and the pooling of the ideas of several people into a new and bigger idea. Where can discussion take place? It reaches its highest development only in a free society. Without it, indeed, a free society cannot endure. Some groups discuss to improve their thinking, understanding, and knowledge. In doing so, they deepen their appreciation of human relations and group processes. Other groups discuss in order to arrive at decision and action. But regardless of the purpose of the particular meeting, Good discussion on the intellectual plane helps people, both as individuals and as groups, to act more wisely. And good discussion on the plane of action helps people, alone and together, better to think, to know, and to understand. Discussion, both for understanding and for action, has existed from the very beginning of the free society of men.
Have we not admitted that the rulers may be mistaken about their own interest in what they command, and also that to obey them is justice?
Yes.
In that case, is there any escape from the conclusion that the weaker are commanded to do not what is for the interest, but what is for the injury of the stronger?
Nothing can be clearer. Yes, if you're allowed to be his witness, there is no need of any witness. Thrasymachus himself acknowledges that rulers may sometimes command what is not their own interest, and that for subjects to obey them is justice.
This was discussion to gain understanding. Here there was no intention that as a result of the exchange of opinions and ideas, any direct action would be taken. However, at the same time in ancient Greece, other men were discussing.
It may well be that failing to wage war at this stage will prove more costly at a later date.
How so?
After our enemy has subjugated our colony and enslaved its subjects, do you think they will be content to halt there?
You must remember that the enemy feel they have as much right to the colony as we have.
Discussions for understanding or for actions, such as these, which took place in ancient Greece, have existed wherever men were free to state their opinions. In colonial days in the United States, a discussion group called the Junto was formed by Benjamin Franklin. It made little difference whether or not any decision was made, or probably the exchange of ideas and opinions helped these men gain in stature and knowledge. One of the greatest examples of discussion leading to action was the Constitutional Convention of 1787 in Philadelphia. Their work brought forth a document that with its subsequent amendments has been the most forceful instrument in preserving the unity and freedom of democratic principles in this country. Today, in Senate subcommittee rooms, important issues of the day are discussed and recommendations made. But discussion can be useful not only where national or international issues are at stake, but in everyone's daily life and work. Farmers, housewives, athletes, doctors. You can say things in many ways and many languages. You may be right or wrong. It is well to remember that it is vitally important that discussion exists, whether between individuals or nations. Too often have men seen headlines such as these. If discussion is so valuable, why not use it more deliberately and consciously? This idea, which is not a new one, has many advocates today. Everywhere, groups are meeting and using one of two basic methods to organize their collective thoughts. In the first case, a group makes some use of an outside resource, such as a guest expert, a panel, a film, a book, or a document.
A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed...
Now, wait a minute. That doesn't add up. You can't sell me the fancy notion that all men are created equal.
Ditto on that. I know the Declaration of Independence, and a lot of things in it aren't self-evident to me.
It seems to me there are two different questions. George brought his up first, so let's start with that.
Well, it doesn't make sense to say that Joe Dokes, born on the wrong side of the tracks, is the equal of the bank president's son.
But don't you suppose Mr. Jefferson was smart enough to think of that, too?
Where did he hide the answer? The Declaration of Independence isn't supposed to be a crossword puzzle. I can read as well as the next man, and it says in big print, all men are created equal.
Oh, I can punch that full of holes, too. How about the sharecropper or crippled children? Are they equal?
We're wandering away from the main truth. I think what Jefferson had in mind was political equality and religious equality. I don't think he was referring to material things at all.
You mean that under the law, all men are treated as equals, that they share equal rights?
Exactly. Equality of opportunity.
When he said all men, did he mean just men or women, too?
Oh, both, I'm sure.
Then you can't say political equality. The women couldn't vote until the 19th Amendment was passed.
Maybe in those days, women didn't care about politics or voting.
Well, I think Jim's right about the religious angle, that all people were created equal in the sight of God.
What good are all these people getting out of all this? The group, by using the Declaration of Independence as a basis for discussion, is getting a better understanding of equality and the stimulation of a group experience. Now, for the second method of organized discussion. A group pooling its own experience and judgment, which means using its own resources.
All right, ladies, since everyone is here and on time, let's start our discussion for this week. We all decided to go into the subject of allowances for our children. Do we all agree that our children should have allowances at all?
There can't be any argument about that. It's healthy training for them to have some money of their own.
Well, not only that, but it gives them responsibility. It teaches them how to care for their money, and in later life, it'll help them understand better how to save and what to spend.
Well, I think we all agree children should have some sort of allowance. Now we're faced with the problem of how much.
Does everyone agree with that? Well, now I believe the next step is to discuss the amount.
That's what bothers me. My son came home last Friday from school, and he said 50 cents a week wasn't enough because Mrs. Weltman's boy is getting $1.50 a week. Why can't he get the same?
Well, I don't see what's wrong with $1.50.
Well, if you can afford it, it's wonderful, but I can't. My budget won't allow it. That's what's wrong.
Mrs. Miller has a very strong point there. What do you have to say, Mrs. George?
As long as I can afford it, I don't see why I shouldn't give my boy anything I can give him.
Not if it creates trouble and dissatisfaction. Why give a child a false feeling of superiority?
Superiority may show itself in many ways. One child may be smarter than the other, one more athletic.
And so allowances may be one way of showing superiority.
Well, I still think we should all agree on the same allowance.
Oh, no.
But should it be given strictly as an allowance or more in the nature of a reward for doing something good, like washing dishes?
But if you did it that way, then children would expect to be paid for everything they did.
Well, at least they'd learn early that you don't get something for nothing, that you have to work for it.
Well, I guess it all goes back to what you think a family is. A place where everyone pitches in to help, or a place where children can learn to solve their own problems.
Shouldn't it be both?
These ladies may not all agree, but one thing is certain. Discussion has helped them to gain insight they didn't previously have. Perhaps as a result, each can make her own family a better one. Yes, there's no question of the benefits derived from discussion. But it's important not only to discuss, but discuss well. There is a right way and a wrong way. This meeting was called for 7:30. But no one seemed interested. If they had been, they would have been on time. This man has already been talking for 20 minutes, giving no one else a chance to participate in what's supposed to be a discussion, not a lecture. Now the group is forgetting that a topic for discussion was selected. Stick to it. This is supposed to be one discussion group, not 3 or 4. This group will never know what the first speaker's final point was, because Bill, and the rest of them as well, didn't realize that listening is just as important as speaking. These people met in order to discuss, but they gained very little more than frustration. If they'd been consciously aware of themselves as a group and had been willing to accept their responsibilities as members of a group, their discussion might have been more like this. None of these people made long speeches. Everyone had a chance to participate. The members of the group stuck to the topic they had gathered to discuss. They acted as one group, not as 3 or 4. Yes, these people were aware of themselves as a group and were willing to take responsibility as members of the group. But who are these people? What are their backgrounds? what has belonging to a discussion group done for them? Membership in a discussion group means different things to different people. To some, it's something special. To others, participating in a discussion group meant a new experience in using one of the tools of freedom. Joe Krakowski lived in a country which had lost its freedom. His life was regimented from morning until night, both his work and his ideas. When he got to this country, it didn't take him long to find a job, but he still didn't understand how to use that freedom which was now part of his environment, until he became a member of a discussion group.
But don't you suppose Mr. Jefferson was smart enough to think of that too?
Here he found a place where he could express his opinions, and they'd be listened to, where he heard the opinions of others and could express his agreement or disagreement. Yes, here Joe found that democracy really existed. To George Bruce, the discussion group meant a new dimension to his life. His business day began at 8 in the morning and did not end when the official working day was over, or until he was ready to go to bed.
George, why don't you try to relax? Every night you bring your office home, strapped right on your back.
Would you rather have me stay at the office and work?
Well, you don't have to kill yourself, and you don't have to give up every other interest in the world.
Okay, I'll buy that point. In certain things, it doesn't matter what side of the tracks people are born on. They enjoy equal opportunity. But I still say...
Exactly. Equality of opportunity.
In the discussion group, George Bruce found another interest. He thought through problems which he'd never begun to think about before, and started his life towards a more well-rounded pattern. To Bill and Nancy Gates, the discussion group was just as important.
We should never have moved here from Springfield, Bill. You're at the factory all day, and I don't know a soul in this town.
Nancy, we moved here for a good reason, a better job for me, opportunities for both of us. We'll meet some people pretty soon.
I guess it takes a little time, but...
That's right. But maybe there is something that we could do.
I hope so.
Well, I can punch that full of holes, too. What about the sharecroppers and crippled children? Are they equal?
Bill and Nancy not only got a fuller life from their participation in the discussion group, but it brought them companionship and new friendships. Miss King didn't have too much variety in her life. To her, it was extremely interesting, even exciting. But she soon realized that a broader knowledge would make her relationships more interesting, more exciting.
When he said all men, did he mean just men or women, too?
Miss King found out what other people were thinking, found out that there were points of conversation and interest other than those she'd been living with for many years. The values that come from a discussion group are varied, but to most people, life can achieve a new dimension. Personal effectiveness is heightened through a better understanding of people and how they work together. Above all is the social importance of the discussion group. It bridges the gap between the single individual, the family, and the great mass of society, making it a medium through which the modern world can face its problems with great intelligence and greater understanding. Discussion. When it is effective, discussion has many values. Let's take them up one at a time. Discussion brings to the individual a broader and richer life. It pools experience, information, and intelligence. It gives people a greater understanding of the process by which groups may work together effectively. It makes peaceful, intelligent cooperation possible. The free way of life depends upon peaceful, intelligent cooperation. It is one of the first things to go when a free society goes. To derive the most benefit from discussion, you must learn to do it well. Discussion is a democratic symbol of freedom. It leads to peace. One of these is the right of free speech. So use it, and use it well.
hope tomorrow will be a quiet day.
Oh, I do.
Thank you very much for the books. They certainly were a big help.
Did you find what you were looking for? Almost, but not quite.
She's never satisfied.
Well, we're always glad to help you.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
May I help you?
Are you the librarian?
Yes.
My name is Jones, Theodore Jones.
Oh, yes, I believe I met your wife at the school tea.
Probably.
Are these some books you want?
No, actually, some books I don't want.
I don't understand.
Well, I've been making a list,
Mrs. Green.
These are some books I found on the shelves.
And you don't want them?
This list, Mrs. Green, suppose you look at it and tell me if you think any of these books or any of these writers actually mean any good to us.
I don't know.
Well, this first book, Mrs. Green, this first writer, you know, of course, he's been exposed as a communist. The second, he's a well-known fellow traveler.
Mr. Jones, we have books representing all sorts of views.
Yes, so I see. Perhaps I'd better explain my position.
Well, shall we go out to the desk?
All right, fine. I was going to explain. Mrs. Green, there's a group of us. I don't want you to think I'm alone in this. A group here in this community, including a former judge, a clergyman, an investment banker, and so on. They asked me to drop in here and have a look around. We're comparing notes with similar groups in other communities. You see, Mrs. Green, we have children, and our children use our public libraries.
I have children, too.
And what do you think? Do you think it's wise to pass out the propaganda of an enemy who would destroy every freedom we possess?
Are we doing that?
Well, this list. Do you approve of these books?
Very likely not, but is that important? Mr. Jones, just what are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting, along with the others in our group, that it would be well if these books were removed from circulation.
Well, how can we do that?
Oh, come now, we're not that helpless. I don't blame you for being cautious, Mrs. Green. I understand
I'm
that-
not being cautious at all. But we are supposed to be a free library for people who are free to read what they choose.
Yes, I've heard that argument. And it reminds me that people were once free to get scarlet fever and to spread it just as they chose. But when we got wise, we adopted quarantine. Mrs. Green, I don't need to ask you what you think the communists would do if they had their way right here.
I can imagine.
And they're sure they will have their way, because they're confident we'll do half the job for them. And that's what we're doing when we support a library to disseminate their stuff. Why, in a sense, this library ought to have a small plaque reading Communist Information Center.
I don't think that's true at all.
You doubt these books are propaganda? Look at them. Look at the list.
Even if I agreed with everything you said about all of these books, there's nothing I can do about it. Our policies are set by the library board. The only thing I can suggest is that you talk with them.
When do they meet?
Right here on Monday evening.
I'll be here. Will you be here, Mrs. Green?
Oh, yes. The board will probably want to know my own recommendation.
Good. Sorry if I kept you.
Not at all.
Good night.
Good night.
This list. Do you approve of this list?
I wholly disapprove of what you say, but will defend to the death your right to say it.
This first writer, he's been exposed as a communist. The second is a well-known fellow traveler.
Though all the winds of doctrine were let loose to play upon the earth, so truth be in the field, we do injuriously by licensing and prohibiting. Let truth and falsehood grapple. Whoever knew truth put to the worse in a free and open encounter.
Mrs. Green, there's a group of us. I don't want you to think I'm alone in this. A group here in this community, including a former judge, a clergyman, an investment banker, and so on.
No official yet born on this earth is wise enough or generous enough to separate good ideas from bad ideas, good beliefs from bad beliefs.
I'm suggesting, along with the others in our group, that it would be well if these books were removed from circulation.
Books won't stay banned. They won't burn. Ideas won't go to jail. In the long run of history, the censor and the inquisitor have always lost. The only weapon against bad ideas is better ideas.
If there be any among us who would wish to dissolve this union, or to change its republican form, let them stand undisturbed as monuments of the safety with which error of opinion may be tolerated, where reason is left free to combat it.
And so as I walked through those stacks that other evening, wondering what to say to you, I thought of the voices who have already answered these arguments. But I remembered other voices, too. On our shelves, you will find the disputes of many centuries. Those men who spoke for monarchy, and those who spoke against it. Those who spoke for slavery, and those who spoke against it. Those who spoke for Hitler, and those who spoke against him. For always it has been our tradition that Americans have the right to read all sides, and that in that freedom is our strength. Now, at a recent meeting of the American Library Association, our council resolved to oppose any encroachment on this freedom to read. President Eisenhower sent a message to this meeting, and I'd like to quote from it. We must in these times be intelligently alert, not only to the fanatic cunning of the communist conspiracy, but to the grave dangers in meeting fanaticism with ignorance. There are some zealots who, with more wrath than wisdom, would adopt a strangely unintelligent course. They would try to defend freedom by denying freedom's friends the opportunity to study communism in its entirety, its plausibilities, its falsities, its weaknesses. But we know that freedom cannot be served by the devices of the tyrant. As it is an ancient truth that freedom cannot be legislated into existence, so it is no less obvious that freedom cannot be censored into existence. And any who act as if freedom's defenses are to be found in suppression and suspicion and fear confess to a doctrine alien to America. I recommend that the request made by Mr. Jones and his group be rejected.
Mr. Jones?
My answer is brief. While we argue, they're working. They never stop. They're confident. Why shouldn't they be? We're doing their work. Citizens of our own country are supplying the books, the magazines, and the distribution. The communists take us from inside. They always do. Must we be that stupid? Do we have to aid our own destruction? Do any of you ladies and gentlemen think this is less than a war for survival? If this is, let me give a quotation too. Offense is the best defense.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's up to you now. Mr. Jones and his associates ask the removal from our shelves of a list of books which they feel are dangerous. Mrs. Green says that such action would destroy our traditional rights, and she regards this as the greater danger. I think we all agree that a library can and must help us preserve our freedoms. How can it best serve that end? Is there further discussion?
How can a library best serve our freedom? That has been the subject of our discussion. It is the kind of question that must be answered not only by library boards, but also by schools, churches, and community groups. In the end, it must be answered by you. You, the citizen, are the one whose freedom is at issue. So give it further thought, won't you? Because this is one of the problems that challenge our time.
We take up canning. We're all so used to Mother opening a good can of soup or pork and beans. Seems hard to realize there was a time, only 150 years ago, when nobody'd ever heard of canned foods. Yes, Joe?
What did they use tin cans for then?
There weren't any tin cans those days. They hadn't been invented yet. For thousands of years, people have been seeking some way to preserve food. Even a great conqueror like Napoleon couldn't beat spoiled food.
Mon General, do you hear that? The city has gone mad. The people are beside themselves with joy.
And it was such a little victory.
But there will be more and greater glories, Mon General. Italy, then Austria, then England. What a victory that will be.
My soldiers cannot eat victory.
What do you mean, Mon General?
Our greatest enemy is not England or Austria or Italy. It is scurvy. An army marches on its stomach. Ours are living on salted meat and stale bread. Did I say living? They're dying. Dying like flies. Not gloriously in battle, but miserably. Of slow starvation.
Is there no way?
There must be some way to preserve fresh food on the march. Junot, will ask the directory to issue a call to all patriots. The man who will find a way to keep food fresh and wholesome over long periods. A grateful nation should reward him well.
Yes, mon général.
Who knows? Somewhere in France, perhaps somewhere in this city, at this very moment, there is an unknown man who will be the true savior of France.
Nicolas, it is late.
Huh? What?
Oh, you will kill yourself. All day long in the shop, all night long in the kitchen.
Look, Mama, my new bottles. Those others, too small in the neck. These, I can put in big pieces of meat and whole vegetables.
Oh, you have put so much in that one, it is running over.
That's to get the air all out of it, Mama. The food keeps better when the air is out.
Why is that?
I don't know, but it is so. I wish there was some way to seal it tight. I put 3-4 layers of cork in it. I turn them against the grain. I cover them with parchment. I do the best I can. But when the air gets in, the food is all spoiled. There. Now, this time, I'll cook this 1 hour and 10 minutes. Mama, the cooking is done.
Oh, it is too bad, Nicolas.
It is the glass bottles. When the fire is too hot, the bottles break. When it isn't hot enough, the food spoils. Oh, well, I try it again tomorrow.
Nicolas, listen to me. The directory has offered a prize of 12,000 francs for the man who can tell them the best way to preserve food for the army.
12,000 francs?
Yes, you must see them right away.
What chance have I? Competing with men of means and reputation? My poor equipment. Nobody knows me.
But they will know you. Already you know more about preserving food than any other man in France. You are going to the directory and tell them what you know.
Monsieur Pierre, this report of yours interests me greatly.
Thank you, Monsieur le Commissaire.
But preserving food stored in your own cellar is one thing, my friend. And preserving it against the rigors of travel and the change of climate, that is quite another.
But I have done that too, Monsieur le Commissaire.
How do you mean?
I have sent out my little bottle on ship for 1 year on the Citoyen, far across the Equator, far south on the Marie-Louise. I've tested in every climate. And here, Monsieur le Commissaire, here are signed proofs from ship captains and port prefects all over the world saying the food kept fresh.
Monsieur Pierre, it appears to me to be of moment to spread the knowledge of your processes for the conservation of animal and vegetable substances. I desire that you write an exact and detailed description of these processes, and we then shall talk about the award.
It is an affair. Payment is long delayed. With these 12,000 francs go the gratitude of all France and the warm esteem of your emperor. You've made a contribution to life, not only for our armies and navies, but for our citizenry as a whole. There will come a time when the whole world will bless the name of Appert.
Come in, Peter Durand. And how's the best pickler and preserver in all Middlesex this fine morning?
Oh, not so fine.
Oh, another batch of preserves went wrong?
Yes.
What you need is a good cup of tea. Get me that tea canister there. You know, I could do with a bit of steaming myself.
I don't know what's the trouble. That Frenchman, Appert, has done wonders in the preserving line. But he admits himself there's more than a bit of luck to keeping food. It's so hard to get the bottles airtight. And then, like as not, they break. Cooking.
It's too bad there isn't something else you could put up the food in.
Oh, I've thought of that. I've experimented with all kinds of glass. I've even tried earthen pots. Now, if I could only find something that would stand the heat, like your tin kettle there. Only shaped more like, this canister. Excuse me.
But Peter, your tea!
Jeremy, can you make a tin canister?
A what, sir?
Like this tea canister, only of tin metal.
Well, it's never been done before, as far as I know of, sir. But there's always a first time for everything. And as I always says, why not? I reckon so.
All right, let's have at it.
There's your tin canister, sir. Fill it with whatever, and I'll solder the top one for you.
By Jove, I think we've hit it. If this thing works, how many of these could you make in a day?
All day?
Yes, all day. How many?
Oh, I'd say about 50 or 60. But would you have use for all them tin canisters?
I've a feeling, Jeremy, that we're going to use millions of them.
Millions?
I'm so proud of you, Peter. Your tin canister really works, doesn't it?
Yes. At first, they swelled up and burst. The contents expanded under heat. But we've solved that by leaving this small vent in the top and then soldering afterwards. I've been preserving peas all week and not a single canister burst.
Why, Peter, that's wonderful.
I've got the pantry filled with them now.
What was that?
The pantry.
Oh.
The peas. They're exploding right in the canisters.
But why is that?
I wish somebody'd tell me.
Oh.
The first canning business in America was started soon after the War of 1812. Can you imagine walking all the way from New Orleans, all the way to Boston? William Underwood did it, and no hitchhiking. There weren't even roads in those days. The only way to get there was to walk through Indian wilderness, and it took 2 years. But let's start the day he landed in New Orleans. He went first to the St. Charles Coffee House.
good coffee, sir.
It's always good at the St. Charles, sir.
Isn't it?
Pardon me, sirs. The clerk suggested you might help me. At your service, sir. My name's Underwood. Just off the latest packet from England. Firm of McKee & Company Limited, London. No doubt you've heard of us.
No. Nor I. I can't say that I have.
Picklers and preservers. I'm here to set up a preserving plant in America. If you know of anyone who'd be interested in joining such an enterprise...
I wouldn't know anyone interested in a pickling business. Nor business from England. I'm sorry, sir, but New Orleans is filled with men who only a few short months ago stood out there in the swamps with Andy Jackson and fought off your soldiers from England. These gentlemen were there. I was there. And my son is still there. You won't find much welcome in New Orleans for anything English, sir. And now you'll excuse us, sir.
I can do nothing in New Orleans. I leave tomorrow for Baltimore in your state of Maryland. I understand there is the center of American population.
What, sir? Between here and there is a vast and bloody wilderness. Savage Indians and renegade white men. The old man could never get through alive. You had best return to England, sir.
My passage money has been long since spent. I can't walk to England, hence I must perforce walk to Baltimore.
You ever read in these here bottled foods, Caleb?
Who, me?
No. I hear tell us how they're bottling love apples now.
Love apples? Great Christopher. What for? To eat? They're poison.
Some say they ain't. They call them tomatoes now.
Tomatoes, huh? Oh.
Here's a jar of that new batch of tomatoes you asked to see, Mr. Underwood.
Oh, yes, Thomas. Well, this looks pretty good. How often does it turn out this way?
Oh, almost every other time, sir.
Well, I suppose if we hit it right half the time, we ought to be satisfied. We've got a pretty good foreign market now. Our own people just don't seem to take to preserved food.
They say they're too expensive.
I know. Well, I don't see how we can make them much cheaper. And we're getting competition now, too.
Who's that, sir?
Kensett and Daggett down in Baltimore. They're pickling oysters. Very place I tried to start up 10 years ago and couldn't. Well, maybe in 10 years more. Now, let me see, where was I? Oh, yes. Our industry is still a puny infant, though more and more preserved food firms seem to be entering the field all the time. Unfortunately, the uncertainty of preserved foods even yet, plus the prices we have to charge for them, keeps our domestic trade scattered and small. However, we press hopefully forward. Within the month, we have adopted the English invention of the tin vessel. Tin canisters, they're called. What is this, Mr. Henley?
What?
This word at the top of the column. C-A-N-S.
Oh, that's an abbreviation used by our bookkeepers for canisters. Tin canisters was too long for their columns, so they cut it down to tin cans.
Tin can. Make a correction in that last sentence I gave you. We have adopted the English tin canisters. Only Americans call them tin cans.
Yes, Professor. We understand about yeast fermenting bread and wine and beer, but what makes milk sour? There is no yeast in that, is there?
No. Some so-called scientists would have you believe it sours from spontaneous generation. But I am convinced that the ferment of milk is just another plant, much like yeast, bacteria. And that these bacteria are present in nearly all foods.
How do they get there?
They're already everywhere. In the air, in water, and so minute that 30 million of them can live in a single drop.
Then every time I breathe or take a drink, I get millions of plants. Do they grow inside of me?
You need not worry about them. Anyway, not all bacteria are harmful. Some are beneficial. In fact, the very existence of men and animals on this earth depends on some of them. But bacteria in food will, I maintain, ultimately destroy it if they are not themselves destroyed. For years now, all preservers, from Eper on down, have experienced great uncertainty in keeping food fresh. Some of it, after having been sealed up for days, decayed, and the resultant gases exploded and burst the containers. If I am right, and I am sure I am, they could correct this once and for all simply by heating the food hot enough when sealing it to kill all bacteria. There are heat-resisting bacteria, which merely boiling point will not kill. Sir Humphrey Davy tried adding calcium chloride. That raised the boiling point some, but not enough. Cooking in a closed chamber with steam pressure will do it. But anything that will kill all the bacteria in the food and seal it that way will positively preserve the food fresh indefinitely, or my name is not Louis Pasteur.
Massachusetts boys. And there'll be boys from the Carolinas, from the other states, both north and south. Oh, why must such things be? But they all must be fed. This preserved food business was started by one war. Now it will be enlarged by another. Underwood and Company, Parker and Jones of Maine, Duckwall out in Ohio, and packers like us in the South, Isaac Solomon of Baltimore, McMenamin and Company of Virginia, and all the rest will be working full blast. And if that Frenchman, Pasteur, is right in his theory about bacteria, well, then this canning business ought to take a new lease on life.
Yes, Nancy? Did everybody start using canned foods then?
No. After the war, people lost interest again. One reason was canned things were expensive those days, and the food wasn't always as good as it is today. And that brings us to the last section of our story. How many of you have ever heard of anybody having a green thumb?
A what?
A green thumb. Joel?
Isn't that someone who's especially good at growing things?
That's right. The green thumb for planting, they used to say. Well, the time we're talking about, there was a little boy living in a small community near Pittsburgh. Folks declared he had a green thumb. From the time he was 8 years old, he tended the family garden. When he was 12, same age as most of you, he spent his vacations taking care of 3.5 acres, all by himself, selling the surplus to the neighbors. They said he raised the best vegetables anywhere around. By the time he was 16, his garden was so big, he was hiring grown-ups to help and was selling his produce to grocery stores in Pittsburgh.
Did you open that fresh barrel of pickles, Jasper?
Uh-huh.
Then go out and bring in that new horseradish.
All right.
Good morning, Mr. Smithers.
Oh, good morning, Henry.
Any tomatoes today?
Well, to tell the truth, I don't see why I keep on paying you more than do anybody else for garden truck.
Well, for one thing, you don't have to sort over my stuff like that. I only bring you the best. And I think people would rather pay a little more to always get the best, don't you?
Maybe so. Well, bring me in 2 more baskets, if you got them.
Right away.
This is the last of the horseradish. Where do you want to put it?
Up where we always keep it, of course.
Why do they always put horseradish in green bottles, Mr. Smithers?
So as not to show the turnips in it, I reckon.
Say, Mr. Smithers, how would you like some without any turnips?
Huh?
Just pure grated horseradish, put up in real vinegar, and in clear glass bottles so your customers can see what they're getting.
That sounds pretty good. Suppose you bring me in some next time and we'll see.
Yes, sir, on Friday. Now I'll fetch the rest of the tomatoes.
Who's that young feller, Mr. Smithers?
Neighbor Hines. Henry Hines. Why?
Oh, trying to make a splash with his horseradish. We don't need no horseradish. Look at all we got left.
You've either got to quit selling so much, Henry, or else get more help.
I know. 4 more grocers ordered this morning.
Well, what happens when we run out of radishes?
Well, that's what Mr. Smithers wants to know. Seems as customers like our horseradish. But we won't run out, Mrs. Miller. I've got farmers like the Browns and the Merritts growing for us now.
My sister would be glad to help. If you need more help, you know, Mrs. Wilson.
Wasn't she the one who made that good apple butter?
She's the one. All the McCarvels are good cooks. If I do say so, we shouldn't. Why?
Well, one of the grocers wants to buy some of our vinegar, too.
The vinegar?
Mm-hmm, because of the flavor. And I was thinking, if we're going to do that, well, why not put up apple butter and maybe some celery sauce and other things?
Well, of course, my sister and I, we're only home cooks.
Well, that's what we want, just good home cooking put up in cans. No matter how many different things we make, it will always be the best. Put up in the purest and best way we know how.
That's good, you know it?
Yes, those principles for anybody, whether you're building a business or building a life. Only the best you know how. And notice, he didn't feel he had to wait and get away from home to find something to do. He began as a boy, right in his own backyard. Just a common thing like raising a garden, something any boy or girl could do. But he made it a point to do the common thing uncommonly well. And we all know how it worked out. Long since, the quaint little house where young Henry Hines bottled his first horseradish has given way to the mighty H.J. Hines food factories in this country and abroad. And his original garden plot has grown to more than 200,000 acres in every part of the world, giving work to thousands and feeding millions. That's what comes of doing anything the best you know how. But it is also important to keep trying to do better all the time. In the early 1900s, Mr. Hines hired scientists and began pioneering in food research. And to it soon came a distinguished visitor, the chief chemist of the United States Department of Agriculture.
All sorts of experiments, Dr. Wiley, to improve on flavor and appearance, but mostly to find the causes of food spoilage and how to prevent it. We don't believe in chemical preservatives.
That's why I'm here. Your company is fighting for the same thing I am.
Making any progress, Herb?
Nothing yet. Don't take it so hard, young man. What are you trying to do?
Grinding mustard and then trying to make it spoil.
Mustard? Oh, I'll see you later.
We'll cooperate in any way we can. Mr. Hines thinks just as you do, that what we need is a pure food law. He says if we have good food, cooked properly, in a clean factory, we don't need artificial preservatives.
He's right. He's absolutely right.
Mr. Hines sent his son Howard to Washington to talk to the president. And about that time, the women took a hand. Letters and telegrams began to pour into our capital from the Club Women of America, giving strong support to Dr. Wiley, Mr. Hines, and the others who were fighting for it. Yes, Raymond?
We do have a food law now, don't we?
Indeed we do. The original Food and Drug Act of 1906 was replaced by the new Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938. It protects the consumer, you and me, against food adulteration. More than that, it demands modern sanitary food plants and the utmost cleanliness of those who work there.
Yes, Mary. Well, does the pure food law make us get all our vitamins?
No. The big food companies like H.J. Hines, in their research laboratories and experimental kitchens, are keeping right on with their food research. Hines now has a new nutrition laboratory. It is studying more ways all the time to give us still more food value out of the products that come from the farmers' fields to be prepared at the factory and canned for use in our homes. In the Hines Home Economics Department, they are always trying out new, appetizing ways for housewives to serve canned foods. There are other places, like the famous Mellon Institute, where the Hines Company maintains research fellowships. With all this going on today, I can't help but think how pleased Appert and Pasteur would be to see all this food research they began still going stronger than ever. And can you imagine how Peter Durand's eyes would bulge if he could see his production of 60 cans stepped up to 1.5 million a day at Hines. That's all for now. There are a number of lessons I hope you've learned from it, not the least of which is that motto of Mr. Hines, who all through his life continued to do the common thing uncommonly well.
We in America are immigrants, or the children of immigrants. We are one people, but a people welded from many nations and races. People who came to America during a vast migration from Europe to other parts of the world. In this migration, millions of Europeans left their homelands to settle in new countries across the seas. Almost 2/3 of them came to the United States. When we became a nation, our population numbered just under 4 million. Each symbol here represents 500,000 people. Most of our people were of British origin. But there were also Dutch and many Germans, as well as French, Spanish, a great many Negroes, and others. The era of the Great Migration from Europe began about 1820. During the following 70 years, immigrants came from Western and Northern Europe in growing numbers. The earliest waves brought people from Ireland and Great Britain, from Germany and nearby countries. Later, the Scandinavians joined the migration from the north and west of Europe. Then, in the 80s, from the south and east they came as the migration fever spread deeper into Europe. During this period, too, came immigrants from the Orient. The century following 1820 saw Asiatic migration as Chinese and Japanese crossed the Pacific in considerable numbers. These people from the Orient settled chiefly in our far west. The flow of immigration reached its peak between 1891 and 1920. During these years, a tremendous movement set in from the countries of Southern and Eastern Europe. Many still came from the north and west, but many more came from Austria-Hungary, Poland, Russia, Italy, and the Balkan Peninsula. But what of the people behind these symbols? What were their motives and hopes? Let us turn back to a steamship agent's office in a European port a half-century ago. Most of those seeking passage to America are farmers and peasants, like this family from Eastern Europe. Behind them lie years of labor on land that could never be theirs. A man grows discontented when his own labors and the labors of his family go mainly to enrich a landlord. For peasants like these, there is hope of a better life in America across the sea. And there are those who have known at firsthand the political oppression of autocratic governments. Governments that deal swiftly and ruthlessly with those who dare to champion political liberty and freedom of expression. To the man deprived of civil rights in his native land, America offers the hope of freedom. And then there are families like this, who have suffered a religious persecution that could drive them from their homes and scorn their right to worship in their own manner. For such as these, there is the promise of religious freedom in immigration to America. These and millions of others like them make up the Great Migration. Millions of every nation and calling, drawn together by their vision of America, a vision of land, opportunity, and freedom. These gladly face the long ocean voyage. Then, immigration gateways like Ellis Island and examination by immigration officials. Here, at the turn of the century, almost all Europeans enter freely, except undesirables such as criminals. For all new arrivals, there is a medical examination to weed out those with serious illnesses and dangerous diseases. Many are rejected. Once in the new land, what lies ahead? These groups of Europeans that came before 1890 spread rapidly westward to settle both on the farms and in the cities. By the year 1900, settlements of Germans were scattered widely from east to west. Scandinavians were grouped in the northern Middle West, and the Irish were largely concentrated in the northeast. Today, the sons of these immigrants still cultivate the soil that their fathers made their own. And the farming communities and cities founded by these groups are typically American. Here, there is little trace of the old world, though we find these communities still peopled by the children of these immigrants. Most of the immigrants that came after 1890 went into the factories and found their homes in the tenements of America's growing cities. The crowded slums became America's melting pot. Sprawling communities of transplanted peoples, living side by side, but still diverse in languages and customs, as diverse as these shop signs that mark the immigrant neighborhoods. These communities posed an urgent question to America. Could these people of many nations become a part of the American way of life? In meeting this problem, many agencies played a part. The churches that preserved traditional ties in the midst of new surroundings. The newspapers that spoke to the immigrants in languages they knew. The trade unions that taught them to work together. These and other agencies drew into the larger community the stream of new arrivals. In 1924, a law was passed to restrict immigration from countries outside the Western Hemisphere. By this law, the number to be admitted henceforth was to be in proportion to the national origins of our country's population. This gave to Northern and Western Europe more than 80% of the total, while Southern and Eastern Europe received less than 20%. After 1924, immigration from Europe dwindled and virtually stopped during the Depression of the 1930s. But immigration from our American neighbors went on. A century of immigration has brought in many people from Canada, and more recently, there has been a lively migration from Mexico, as well as from the Caribbean area. Today, these people of every nation and race have become Americans all, a people still diverse, but sharing common aspirations and drawn together in their common contribution of the skills and talents that have made America a great nation. The school has been a most important influence in the making of Americans. Here, the meaning of our country, its institutions, and its culture reaches the children of every community and race and origin. Here, too, the latest arrivals from abroad, young and old alike, have an opportunity to study the language and history of America. These people are preparing for an important step, admission to citizenship. Here, they come to testify to their fitness to become once and for all a part of the United States of America. To these new citizens belongs the promise of long ago. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
Good afternoon. I was wondering if you'd have any plaid wool suits in size 16.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm afraid we haven't any in the fashion salon just at the moment. But if you'll try the sportswear, it's down the aisle and to your right. I'm sure you'll find just what you want. And if you have time to stop on your way back, I'd love to show you some of our new gay little date dresses. We have a wonderful selection just now, and there are 3 or 4 that I think are particularly attractive.
Oh, thank you very much. I might come in tomorrow with my mother.
Guess what? The new stock's here. Oh, good. I wonder what it's like.
I don't know, and I don't care. Just because I didn't have many customers this afternoon, I suppose Miss Hastings will expect me to get it out. How am I expected to sell anything if I'm off the floor?
Oh, it won't take much time if we both do it. You know, I'm awfully anxious to know if any of those dresses have that new skirt treatment. I wonder if any of them have those sleeves that Giovanni showed in his spring collection. We'll just wait till I put these things back where they belong, and then we'll get the stock straightened out in no time at all.
Thank you very much, miss. I'm sure you'll like your suit. Oh, my, it looks nice. You know, I rather like carrying a smart-looking package with a good store's name on it. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
I wish Helen would be a little more careful of other people's stock. She's left these in an awful mess. Belts undone, buttons open. I nearly lost a sale just now because she put our only size 16 plaid in with the size 12. I'm afraid if she doesn't show more interest, she won't last very long. I certainly don't envy the personnel manager his job.
Miss Barry, I don't know if you realize how closely we watch the selection and development of individual members of our staff. After careful selection, it's not only a matter of sales record, although that's usually a pretty good indication of whether a person has the qualities that are important and valuable to the store. Qualities such as good taste in dress and attention to the details of being well-groomed. Politeness, of course, and a pleasant manner. Those are fairly obvious requirements, perhaps. But the girl who really gets ahead in this business has more than that. Her job isn't something she does during store hours simply to earn money so that she can house and clothe herself. She's honestly interested in creating a friendly atmosphere within the store, and so she does her best to have a spirit of cooperation and teamwork with the other girls in her department. She's interested, too, in sustaining and furthering the good reputation of the store in the whole community. And so she reads the trade magazines and makes it her business to find out all she can about her stock so that she can give the customer the very best information about the merchandise. Now, you had some of these qualities when you began here in the China department a year ago. But in some other respects, you were rather far behind. At first, we had the impression that this was merely a sideline with you, and that you didn't look forward to any future in retail selling. Is that right?
I'm afraid it is. I found it interesting almost from the very beginning, but it took me quite a while to realize the tremendous and actually exciting possibilities of a career in retail selling. Right now, of course, this opportunity I've just been given for becoming assistant buyer to the fashion salon is the most wonderful thing that ever happened to me. I do hope I won't disappoint you.
We don't think you will. And that, of course, is the reason your department head selected you for the job, instead of some of the other girls who have been with us longer, but who haven't shown that extra bit of enthusiasm that means so much. You're going to need another girl in your department now. She should be young, preferably a recent high school graduate, intelligent, and with a real desire to develop into a first-rate businesswoman.
Wouldn't this be marvelous for you to take to college this fall? It'd be perfect with your lined sweater. Sure, but look at the price. Gee, I certainly wish you were coming with us. Have you decided yet what you're going to do? Well, I was thinking of taking a business course, but just the other day when we were in that store, I got a new idea. You know, I've never really liked the idea of ordinary office work. I think being a sales girl would be much more interesting. You'd be meeting new people all the time. And if you were any good, I should think you could make a very fascinating career of it. Take that girl who served us this afternoon, and that other one in the fashion salon. I mean, they seem to be terribly interested in their job.
Yes, you know, that girl in the fashion salon could easily have been sort of snippy with us for being in the wrong department. But somehow, why, she actually made me feel like quite an important personage. I think it would be a marvelous idea for you to get a job there.
Hello. You're the new girl in the teenage shop, aren't you?
Yes, this is my relief period, and I thought I'd see what you were featuring in the fashion salon. I thought perhaps I might get some ideas on the new styles and things.
Oh, that's fine. We have some lovely new prints over there on the other side. You know, if you're interested, I have some trade magazines at home that have a great deal of information about retail selling and the fashion industry. I find that keeping up with things like that is a terrific help in developing a really good sales technique. I tell you what, why don't you drop in after work to the apartment and pick them up? Or better still, stay and have dinner with us. This looks like a put-up job, doesn't it? Asking you to dinner, then letting you do the drying up while I pack.
Oh, don't be silly. It's been fun. Gee, I don't see how you can be so calm and collected. If I were going to New York, I think I'd simply collapse with excitement.
Oh, you should have seen her when she first heard she was going. I thought she was going to burst from excitement.
I've never been so excited in my life, but I feel a little scared, too. After all, this is my first trip as assistant buyer, and I feel absolutely bowed down with responsibility. Oh, it all sounds very glamorous and everything. But I know it isn't going to be an easy job.
Oh, I'm sure you'll get along beautifully. I wonder if I'll ever have a chance to be a buyer.
Well, actually, there's a chance for everyone in the store if they're willing to work for it. Oh, I don't want to sound like a smug old grandmother. But honestly, Mimsy, I'm convinced that the business of retail selling offers women some of the very best opportunities for building really successful careers. Oh, heavens, that must be my taxi. Now, let me see if I've forgotten it. Don't forget your gloves. I'm awfully sorry if you've got to look up your mail. Oh, I'm coming. Goodbye to the women, and I'll send you a postcard. Goodbye. No, thanks. And good luck to you, Mimsy. And if you stick at it, you'll be going someday yourself. Goodbye. Bye.
Well, there she goes.
And she really deserves the job, too. You know, being in on all this excitement has really been awfully good for me. I'd already decided to go ahead and make a career for myself out of the business. But seeing somebody that's really well on their way to doing it, well, it gives me just that extra little bit of encouragement that I need. Costume jewelry is what I'm really interested in, but I'm going to do the best darn job I can in the sportswear department. And then if I can prove to the store that I'm capable of taking responsibility, and if they think I'm intelligent enough, I know I'll have a chance to do what I want. A career in retail selling. Sounds like a pretty dull textbook, perhaps, but I'm going to make it a dazzling success story.
This is the residence of Fred Finchley. He's a family man who enjoys the peace and quiet of his little home. Fred Finchley has a good job.
Freddie, look.
And his family enjoys their standard of living. His salary keeps up with the cost of living, and he owns some of those work-saving appliances we all admire so much. Finchley always checks to make sure he gets his money's worth. But after paying his bills, taxes, keeping up his savings account, and life insurance premiums, there never seems to be enough money left to pay for that special dream. But there's a time for dreaming and a time for working. So every workday morning, Finchley joins the stream of traffic that flows toward his job. As you can see, Finchley could not be called a reckless character. But he always gets to work. To right on time.
Finchley!
Yes, J.B.
Finchley, I've wanted to speak to you for some time. You're doing a fine job. I'm raising your salary $60 a month. Have a cigar. Thanks for the good work, Finchley.
Well, gee, thanks, J.B., for the cigar and the raise. $60 a month? Boy, can I use it.
Sure you can, Mr. Finchley. But how?
How?
Yes, what will you do with those extra dollars? There are lots of things you could do. Bury it in a tin can in the backyard, for instance. But idle money may in time depreciate. Or you could spend it on a couple of nights out a week with the wife. This seems like a lot of fun. But with this kind of life, you'd depreciate. So why not put your money to work?
Put my money to work?
That's right, Mr. Finchley. You can own a share of American business. There are over 1,200 companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Companies which employ more than 11 million people, produce half of all the goods made in America, and pay about half the nation's dividends. Many of these companies have been paying dividends for 25 years or longer.
Wait a minute, I'm no tycoon.
Neither are most of the people who own shares in American business. 3 out of 4 of all share owners are in families which make less than $10,000 a year.
But my raise was only $60 a month.
Well, the monthly investment plan is specifically designed for anyone who wants to invest in common or preferred stocks on a pay-as-you-go basis. You can invest from $40 up to $1,000 every month or every 3 months under MIP. So why not visit a member firm of the New York Stock Exchange and get some practical advice on how to own a share in American business? And, Mr. Finchley, before you invest, investigate.
Yeah, invest. Just think, with $60 a month, I could...
Just a moment, sir, if you please. You look like the kind of a man of judgment who knows how to invest his money wisely. Won't you step into my office, please? Let me give you a hot tip, strictly confidential. For a limited time only, we are offering to discriminating buyers like yourself a few shares in a world-famous company with mines in Nigeria, Tasmania, Somaliland, and Brooklyn. It's Utopium Unlimited. It glows in the dark. Small investment, big profit. As a special favor, I'll let you have 100 shares for only 40 cents a share. That comes to $40. Plus, of course, $20 for putting you onto a surefire moneymaker. You are now a man of substance. Thank you, sir, and congratulations.
Hey, you!
Mr. Finchley, there is a big difference between dealing with a fly-by-night operator and a reputable broker.
Please sit down, Mr. Finchley.
First, tell me, what are you gonna sell me?
Not a thing, Mr. Finchley. As members of the New York Stock Exchange, we are prepared to be of service to you if you want to buy or sell stocks or bonds. As you may know, the New York Stock Exchange is the nation's marketplace, where listed securities are bought and sold through brokers representing buyers and sellers. There are nearly 2,000 offices of member firms in the United States. Every day, member brokers buy and sell for their customers hundreds of thousands of shares of stock. For example, a doctor in Atlanta wants to buy some stock. A farmer in Spokane wants to sell his stock in the same company to get cash, say, for a new tractor. The Atlanta broker for the buyer and the Spokane broker for the seller speed the orders to their exchange members on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. When the floor broker representing the buyer bids the price asked by the floor broker representing the seller, a transaction is made. When you sell securities on the New York Stock Exchange, you are paid in cash by the buyer. Every day, millions of dollars of listed securities are bought and sold on the New York Stock Exchange. You can check the price of your stock in a daily newspaper, or by getting the latest market quotation from a member broker like myself.
Well, how do I get the facts before I invest?
Before you'd buy stock in a company, you'd want to know, among other things, its record of sales, its earnings for previous years, what dividends it has paid, and its prospects for the future. Of course, we can't foretell the future, but we can give you many facts and figures to help you select a suitable stock.
Well, how about this monthly investment plan? Maybe I'd want to invest only about $50 a month.
Well, MIP was set up for people who want to buy stocks on a pay-as-you-go basis. And $50 a month can build up quite a little nest egg. Suppose you take a trial run along an imaginary investment route. You might select a stock selling for $100 a share. But let's say you invest $50 each month in a stock selling for $20 a share. At this price, your $50 buys almost 2.5 shares and also pays the broker's commission. If the price of your stock drops, don't get discouraged, providing you believe the long-range price trend will be upward. Of course, you can sell at any time. But if you sell here, you lose on stock that cost you more than $15 a share. In addition, you'll have to pay the broker's commission on the sale. If you decide to continue the plan, your fixed monthly payment of $50 buys 3 1/2 shares of stock at $15 a share. Say you continue to invest over a period of months, and your stock goes up to $27 a share. If you sell here, you'll have a profit on the shares that cost you less than $27. Your $50 monthly payment buys 1 1/2 shares of stock at the price of $27 a share. Of course, the price of a stock can go down as well as up. But with a long-range monthly investment plan, your $50 a month buys more shares when the price is low, fewer shares when the price is high, to average out the price of all the stock you purchase. You can quit the plan at any time, Mr. Finchley, and take the shares you have purchased. But the idea of the monthly investment plan is to invest every month on a long-range basis in the stock of a company that you think will have good earnings and pay dividends. Take, for example, a company whose stock is selling at $20 a share. If that company, over the past year, paid out $1 a share, the dividend yield comes to 5%. You can keep the cash, or if you wish, the dividends can be automatically reinvested for you. Now, the investment route you're traveling is a good one, because the stock has paid satisfactory dividends. And even with its ups and downs, the long-range price trend has been upwards.
Looks pretty good. Thank you. But before I invest, I'm going to study the facts myself.
That's right, Mr. Finchley. All investors should study the facts carefully before they buy any stock. And remember, the monthly investment plan is designed especially for people who want to invest as little as $40 or $50, as well as for those who want to invest up to $1,000 every month or every 3 months. There are many promising investment routes to travel. Many companies whose stocks are listed on the New York Stock Exchange have helped to build our rising standard of living by constantly creating new jobs, services, and products. Therefore, Mr. Finchley and all those who can assume the risk of seeking dividends and profits can put their dollars to work by owning their share of American business through the monthly investment plan.